Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting Mr. Kennedy where he decided not to come, but I know what he was going to say, so I'll answer all the questions why he was wrong and why I'm right. I really know why John Kennedy didn't want to come. He didn't want me to call him out on all the things he says is not the truth. I did that in the LPB debate. You might remember Mr. Kennedy made a big speech about what he has done for TOPS. Well, Mr. Kennedy didn't do anything for TOPS because he couldn't vote in the legislature. He said how he had created this program for TOPS, and I had to remind him he wasn't in the House, and he wasn't in the Senate, and treasurers don't get to vote. So anyway, but he didn't want to talk about how he was a pro-choice Democrat. And one thing really upsets me, and I was the only one out of 24 that produced my tax returns. 3 years back, I let everybody in Louisiana look at my tax return, how much money I made, where it came from, and how much taxes I pay. And Mr. Kennedy wouldn't do that, neither would 23 others. But I think he ought to do it. People ought to see where their money comes from, how much money you make, and if that has any connection with the job you're doing that you're elected to do. He doesn't want to talk about how he was very, 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 very cozy with Bobby Jindal and how he was quoted as saying that Mr. Jindal has done an extraordinary job. He didn't want to talk about charging the taxpayers about $300,000 a year for an office that he's in when he could be in a state office, a luxurious office. He always talks about saving money, but he's sitting in an office that costs $300,000 a year. That's not Mr. Kennedy's money, that's the taxpayers' money. Sort of ironic. He always talks about how he's a watchdog for the people's money, but he sits in a big chair every day in a big fine office that costs $300,000 of taxpayers' money that's unnecessary. He also talks about how he and David Vitter are kindred spirits. Big words, kindred spirits. But Mr. Kennedy has lots of things that he forgets to tell the people. What he really doesn't want to talk about is that he doesn't want to talk about how he wants to take Bobby Jindal's failed policies to Washington, D.C., and how he set up sweet deals for Bobby Jindal selling bonds. We borrowed $500 million. We had to pay back $786 million. And you really ought to ask him about these big banks where he helped Mr. Jindal, gave him $300,000 in campaign contributions. The really irony of John Kennedy is this. I went in his office one time. I want you to listen to this now. I went in John Kennedy's office one time, and there was a picture bigger than this picture right here. Big as that right there, of Earl Long. And I said, John, what would you be doing with a picture of Earl Long on your desk, on your wall? Oh, Foster. This was the old John Kennedy now, not the new one. Not the Newt Gingrich John Kennedy. This is the old John Kennedy. Oh, Foster, don't you know Louisiana's changing? More black people, more Hispanic people. It's going to be a Democratic state, and I'm with Earl Long. Now, he's gone from Earl Long to the right of Newt Gingrich, but he's got one thing consistent. He's trying to figure out which way the people are going. But he's wrong on this because the people are moving in a direction where they want somebody to represent them in Washington that represents the people. I know, first thing you want to know is how are we going to win this race? You know, I had a Democratic opponent, and we wound up in runoff. She had a lot of Democratic votes. I know that we will get the Democratic vote. We have a robust effort like's never been seen before to get the vote out. I want to remind you, when I ran 2 years ago in North Louisiana, I want you to listen to this now, 2 years ago, I represent 24 parishes in North Louisiana, everything from Texas to Mississippi, everything north of Alexandria to Arkansas. 2 years ago when I ran in the exact same territory, precinct for precinct, Mary Landry got 41% of the vote, and I got 62% of the vote, one line below her. I was running against a Republican endorsed by Lobby, and she was running against a Republican endorsed by Lobby. For 40 years, I've been in politics, and I've been able to get crossover votes, independent votes, people who want to hear something that just makes good common sense. Things have changed. People are wanting different kinds of philosophy. I've been on the same page for 40 years. I haven't flip-flopped from a liberal to a conservative to whatever. I've been on the same page for 40 years, helping people. My message fits the times. I'm for equal pay for women. Mr. Kennedy's against it. I'm fighting Wall Street and the big banks. Mr. Kennedy's with them. I want to fix our coast. You cannot name me one politician in the state of Louisiana who's raised more hell about coastal erosion than me. Not one. And I don't live on the coast. And I've been for coastal restoration for 20 or 30 years. And I have not minced words. I've put the cause where I pointed my finger at people who caused the problems. A lot of people didn't have the courage to do it. We've lost 1 million acres of land. And the politicians have tap danced all around the issue, thinking that the federal government ought to pay for it all. Well, the federal government didn't make the oil companies drill the wells. So there's some responsibility there, and I want the people who caused the problem to fix the problem. Mr. Kennedy doesn't. I'm for repairing our roads and our bridges and our port. I'm for saving Medicare and Social Security. When Mr. Kennedy was working, he wanted to privatize the state health insurance program. I'm not for privatizing these programs. I am for term limits. I agree with President-elect Trump. You want term limits? I'll vote for it. I think it'd be a good idea. And I'm also for putting a limit on lobbyists, members of Congress who come out and lobby. Instead of 2 years, I think it ought to be 10 years. I think there's too much of that going on, and a lot of people are getting paid a lot of money for being too cozy with lobbyists. You might remember now, out of 24 people, I'm the only one that said we've got man-made global warming. Nobody else would talk about it, and now President Trump is saying we've got man-made global warming. You couldn't get Mr. Kennedy to say that. You couldn't get anybody else to say it because they didn't want to offend the big companies that do a lot of the polluting. I know we have man-made global warming, and Louisiana's in the crossroads. We could be affected by global warming more than any state in America, and we have to be cognizant of that and try our best to do everything we can to solve the problem. I will not privatize Social Security and Medicare. I've told you 1,000 times Louisiana's a poor state, and there's no reason. How are we a poor state? Right out here we have the interstate to the world, the Mississippi River. We have all the natural resources. We have the fertile farmlands. You know it and I know it. You know what's happened. Politicians have been bought off by the special interest and have not represented the people's interest through the years. There's no way in the world Louisiana should be compared to Mississippi and New Mexico. No way in the world. And everybody knows it. But we haven't taken care of the people's business. We've worried too much about the special interest. My message is going to be simple. I'm taking this message right to the people. I'm going to educate the people on exactly what's happened in the past, and we will be able to do that. There's a difference between John Kennedy and I. I don't wear a $1,000 suit walking down a gravel road. He does. I have strength, I have courage, and integrity. And I don't flip-flop all over the place, and I don't think people who change from red to blue, from blue to red, have the same kind of characteristics. He's a career politician. He talks about how he's not the insider. 20 years or so, John Kennedy's had a job, sole job, making a living off the public. I've had 3 jobs all my life. I'm a farmer, I have an insurance agency, and I'm a public service commission. I have never had one job. I have never made my living off the state. Mr. Kennedy has. In his new ad, he says he's 100% pro-life. The truth was, He was a liberal pro-choice candidate. He said he won't raise our taxes, but he's already done that under Mr. Romer. Or he tried to do it and the people turned it down, getting rid of the homestead exemption. When he worked for Romer, he was against affirmative action. You might remember that. In '94, when he ran on the platform, he supported affirmative action. Now he claims to be a conservative Republican. I don't know what he'll do now, if he's for it or against it. He says he's a fiscal conservative. While he was treasurer, our budget went from $1.4 billion surplus to a $2 billion deficit under Bobby Jindal. Bobby Jindal bankrupted our state, and John Kennedy was signing the checks. While he's been flip-flopping, I've been consistent. I created the Louisiana Educational Excellence Fund. When we sued the tobacco companies, I was able to take $1 billion and put it in a trust fund where we spend the interest in the classroom. I've been fighting for our coach when he hasn't opened his mouth. I stood up to Bobby Jindal and David Vitter and criticized him when he called David Vitter his kindred spirit and how much he liked Bobby Jindal. I have fought greedy corporations while he's taking money from them. I fought the payday loan companies when he never opened his mouth when these people charge 3% and 4% and 500% interest. I've done something about domestic violence for people, women in Louisiana. And I reduced the rate of return or profit for Energy Corporation on the Public Service Commission. They were making 11.2% rate of return when the prime was 2 and 3. I said it was too much. And I got the Public Service Commission to reduce the rate of return for Energy Corporation. I don't think John Kennedy would know a difference between a bulldog and a billy goat. And his ads prove it. I'm amazed by him wearing a Hart-Schaffner and Mark suit with a striped tie walking down a gravel road. That's how out of touch he is with everyday Louisianians. I want y'all to vote for me, and the people listening to this, vote for me. I've been consistent. I've been for the people all my life. I am a populist. I'm not ashamed of it. I hadn't been a populist 20 years ago, and now I'm a Newt Gingrichite. I'm what I am. I represent people. I've been progressive, representing schools. I made kids make better grades to play ball in Louisiana when nobody ever wanted to try to do that. They were making 3 Ds and 2 Fs in Louisiana when I came to the state Senate, and I took on the powers that be and said that we need to educate kids, creating funds. In Bossier Parish, where I live, where we have 5 gaming facilities, I created the Bossier Educational Excellence Fund. Today, Bossier Parish has $45 million in a trust fund where the interest can only be spent in the classroom. Never been done before. So I have some minutes left, a few minutes left. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I will tell you this. We will run a campaign that nobody's ever seen anything like. I want to let you know that. You're going to be surprised. We will deal with the facts. And anything that I said today that you want the facts, we've got the facts. It won't be something that's not the truth.
What are we doing here today?
Well, we're talking about this race that's going to happen in about 2 weeks and how we're going to win. We've got a tremendous amount of support all across America. People are coming here to knock on doors, to call people on the telephone, and we're going to be able to run a full-fledged campaign.
What do you have to offer the people of Louisiana that John Kennedy does not?
Consistency. He's been everywhere. He's flip-flopped. He's been pro-life, pro-choice. He ran as a liberal Democrat. Now he says he's a conservative Republican. He's been Bobby Jindal's right-hand guy. I've never been Bobby Jindal's right-hand guy. I think Bobby Jindal did the worst of anybody in the state of Louisiana, in the history of Louisiana, as far as being a governor. John Kennedy was right up there, let him spend the money, broke the state. So it's a lot of difference. It's a lot of difference. He doesn't think women ought to make the same thing as a man. I do. He's not for raising the minimum wage. I am. He says there's no global warming. I say there is global warming. So there's a world of difference. He hasn't done anything to protect the coast. I fought for 20 years to do something about coastal erosion. He hasn't done any of that. He's in the pocket of the big corporations. I'm in the pocket of the people, and I'm very comfortable there.
And where can people find out information about your campaign and what you stand for and what kind of difference you're going to make for our state?
Campbell2016.com.
Is there anything else you want to add? Anything you want to touch on?
I would appreciate you sending me to Washington. I will go up there and fight for you like I've been fighting for you in the legislature and on the Public Service Commission, on the side of the consumers and the people.